Parents of Reddit, in what ways have you almost accidentally killed your children? Hi Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will upload Tom and Jerry videos. 1995. My wife is 7 months pregnant with our first. Punches me awake at 3 AM crying. Because, well, hormones. She's hysterical. Because we can't be trusted with a baby. We'll hurt it. When I tell her we'll be fine, she says you're freaking klutz. You'll drop the baby down the stairs. 2003. Carrying our 8-month-old third child down the stairs. One of the other kids had left one of those fat crayons on like the second step down. Step on crayon. Foot goes shooting straight forward. I land hard on my ass. Baby gets dropped and lands 2 steps down from me. I had landed oddly, with my left leg sort of tucked backwards. Ended up with a sprained knee from it. I try to free my leg so that I can reach forward and grab my daughter. Leg pops forward. And I managed to kick my daughter down another 5 steps. For the record, she was scared as hell, but completely unharmed. She stopped crying within 10 minutes and went on, as if nothing had happened. God, I'm sorry, and it's not funny, but leg pops forward, and I managed to kick my daughter down another 5 steps. I completely lost it. God, I feel like a bad person. The daughter who got drop kicked is now 10 and laughs hysterically every time she hears the story. I was giving my newborn son his first bath and I had him face down over my arm lowered into the water while I washed his back, not realizing I had completely submerged his face. He was probably under for about 10-15 seconds before I realized he was a bit quiet and the reason why. Still feel sick when I think that he could have drowned in my arms. I posted this further up as well, but if it makes you feel any better, infants, up to I think 6 months, but that could be wrong, reflexively hold their breath and open their eyes when underwater. My kiddo is a tummy sleeper through and through. I kept telling the doctor she wouldn't sleep on her back, but he just kept telling us that she will die if she sleeps on her belly. So I had a sleep deprived, miserable crying child and I was sleep deprived and miserable from holding her while she took 3 naps a day. We couldn't co-sleep so something had to give. If we put her on her belly she slept like a champ. So that's what we did at night. Everything was great, though I felt guilty. Until one morning I go to wake her up and she doesn't move when I call her name. She doesn't move when I'll lay a hand on her back. She is stiff when I yank her out of bed and proceed to run screaming bloody murder throughout the house. She's dead. She's dead. Oh my god, she's dead. I don't know whether to jump in the car and go to the hospital 2 seconds away or call 911. So I'm frantically dancing back and forth in the front yard. My panicked husband finally yells stop for a second, walks over and kisses our super quiet, very confused and very alive child. I told you, she slept like a champ on her belly. When my son was an infant he used to occasionally sleep with his eyes open. I discovered this one sleep deprived night I had fallen asleep nursing him in my bed. I jolted awake a little while later to see my baby laying next to me completely still with his eyes open. I seriously thought he was dead so I picked him up and screamed, and scared the crap out of my weird little baby who slept with his eyes open. When my brother was about 3, my dad was playing that game where you lift your kid above your head repeatedly over and over again. He didn't realize that there was a ceiling fan directly above him, and put my brother's head into a very fast moving ceiling fan. This resulted in a bunch of stitches and a very, very guilty father. We were renting a 2-story house when my son was about 2 years old. All of the bedrooms were upstairs and the windows which led out to an overhang were the floor to ceiling type and opened on the bottom. I thought I was being safe by putting child-proof locks in the kids' room windows. One day I'm downstairs while my son is napping and a neighbor comes over screaming there's a baby on your roof. He had gone into my bedroom and climbed out a window that wasn't locked. Jesus Christ. Are babies just constantly trying to off themselves? Grandma was visiting and doing some knitting. No sooner had the request please make sure your 3-year-old grandson can't get a hold of one of those come out of my mouth when I see him racing around the sofa brandishing a knitting needle. Time goes into slow motion. I can't see him and my legs, strangely, won't move fast enough. There is an odd silence. Then the crying. But it is a cry I've not heard before. It's gargled somehow. Rounding the sofa, it's a scene for which I have no context. My son is sprawled on the ground. My brain first registers the blood, and then the bloody knitting needle. I turn him over and blood begins spurting from his neck and hits the coffee table. Grab PJ top and apply pressure. Scream at grandma to call 911. Grandma forgets how to use this crazy telephone. Husband runs in from garden. A blur of ambulance, attendants, neck brace, gunny, sirens, emergency room. There are ultrasounds, physical checks, stitches, monitors, and finally an overnight stay in hospital for observation. All is well. Arriving home, grandma said she thought we overreacted. Much later she will be heard to wonder aloud why she is not allowed to babysit. I can't believe she had the guts to think you overreacted. Does she not bloody care that a child was nearly killed on her watch? Denial. She probably feels terrible about it, but her conscious mind won't let her accept that her negligence nearly resulted in the death of her grandson. Once while watching a 3-year-old, my godson, we went to a local model train store that he loved. Everything went great, and he had a lot of fun. Walking back to the car, he was tugging at my hand and said, "I want to run." We made it past the last car in the lot except ours. No visible moving cars anywhere ahead of us, and it looked like absolute clear, safe sailing all the way back to our parked car. So, I let go and said, "Go ahead. Run." It all seems so predictable now. He ran about 5 feet forward into the completely empty parking lot, towards our car, then did a 180-degree turn with a speed and agility that would make a hummingbird proud, and took off back the way we came, back into the busy part of the parking lot. Trust me when I tell you that it is simply not possible for a 185-pound adult to change direction that quickly. Fortunately, I still had the presence of mind to yell stop at the top of my lungs. He stopped himself just short of a big SUV with its backup lights on. I think the driver may have seen him. I don't know. Anyway, here's what I learned about small kids. Just because traveling in a certain direction is obvious and natural to you does not mean your toddler thinks the same thing. All directions of travel are on the table. Toddlers can maneuver much more quickly than you can. You need to be holding your toddler's hand firmly any place there are cars. Even cars that could never, ever be a source of danger. Because they still can be. I'm not a parent, but once, driving a 5-year-old around, in the middle of the road he unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed out of the window. I noticed when his body was dangling halfway out of the car, was barely able to grab him by the leg and pull him back in. My heart had stopped. You avert your eyes for a split second and these kids find a way to lemming themselves. Holy frick, you just confirmed one of my worst fears. My son's just learned how to unbuckle himself. So until I can afford a new car seat, I just hope that the car lock system works. It blocks the windows from opening more than 10 centimeters and it locks the rear doors. My son is only 8 months old, and I've already got one. First, you should know that our house is about 100 years old and still has a boiler and radiators, steam, to provide heat. Since the house has settled, not all of the radiator pipes are angled as they should be. This can cause cold air to get trapped in the pipe, preventing certain radiators from heating up. The way to fix this is to remove the pressure regulator from the end of the radiator until steam comes out. This can take up to 10 minutes, depending on how long the boiler has been running, and the distance between said radiator and boiler. One day, the radiator in my son's room wasn't warming. It was nighttime and cold as hell outside, so I snuck into his room and unscrewed the regulator. Not wanting to wake him, I snuck back out, planning to return momentarily and put the regulator back on. Well, I forgot. For about half an hour. All of a sudden, as I'm doing who knows what downstairs, I'm wondering what the high-pitched whistling noise coming from upstairs is. I quickly realize my mistake, and dash to his room, only to find a cloud of steam so dense that I can't see anything. I feel my way to his crib and give him the scare of his very short life as I jerk him up out of a dead sleep and run out of the room. He was no worse for wear, just generally damp from the ridiculous amount of water in the air. After tending to him, I had to manually shut off the boiler and wait for the radiator to cool down before I could put the regulator back on. Then towel dry everything in his room, even the walls and ceiling. These things happen, man. Just be happy that you were in time. It's always tragic to hear such accidents on the news or to read it in the newspaper. What I don't understand is people forgetting their kid in the car for a whole day. Mum thinks dad dropped the baby off at daycare. Dad thinks mum dropped the baby off at daycare. Baby is sleeping silently in one of their cars in a rear-facing car seat. I didn't understand it either until I read an article with some first-hand accounts of good parents who experience this tragedy. Having an infant is stressful, hectic, and leaves parents sleep deprived. After reading those parents' stories, I'd definitely consider getting a car seat alarm that beeps if baby gets left behind. Okay Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will upload Tom and Jerry videos.